The scariest stories are the ones that are true.
In the middle of nowhere, in this remote cabin, someone starts knocking on the door. Doesn't say anything. Just knocks. I'm not sure it counts as another human being because we didn't positively identify anyone, but a few years ago my friend and I were staying in a small cabin my dad had on a remote piece of land in the Idaho wilderness. The nearest town was probably 50 miles away, and the nearest active road that wasn't an old logging road was about 2 miles from the cabin. My friend and I had been singing and laughing in the cabin in our bunks and it was about midnight. We had turned off the lantern and were trying to fall asleep when we heard something that sounded like something had scraped the door. We both lifted our heads up and mumbled a conversation of "Did you hear something?" Then in the middle of nowhere, in this remote cabin, someone starts knocking on the door. Doesn't say anything. Just knocks. We were both in our 30s, but we were so scared shitless we didn't say anything. Just lay there with our heads up staring at the door. We didn't go out until it was light out again, and there was nothing near the door that would have tapped against it, and no animal tracks. It freaks me out even thinking about it. All of a sudden we hear a single gunshot, followed by absolute silence. I camped in Northern California with a couple friends for 3 months straight in 2012. We're talking way out in the wilderness. The whole trip was a great success until we were heading south again. We set up camp a few miles outside of a tiny town as it was getting dark. The only things in this town were one long road, a gas station, a post office, and a bar. In the middle of the night we hear screaming in the distance. We could discern 3 different voices, but they were far enough away we couldn't quite make out what was being said. All of a sudden we hear a single gunshot, followed by absolute silence. I opened my tent and looked over at my friends who were looking back at me. None of us said a word, we laid back down and tried to sleep. Scariest night of my life. A lot of people wonder if we reported this to police. What police? You need to understand that in this area one sheriff patrols 3 counties. That's it? This area of Cali is what Sons of Anarchy was based on. I know that was TV and was dramatized, but there is some truth to what goes on in these areas. The sheriff is most likely in the pockets of the drug runners. It is in your best interest to put your head down and mind your own damn business unless you want to be next. We were kids with no resources, backpacks, and tents, hitchhiking through the Northwest. It would have been so easy to make us disappear next. Dude is fumbling around and it's scary as hell because it's the middle of the darkness in the middle of nowhere. A trail I like backpacking in an isolated area of Pennsylvania was the setting for this odd encounter. The trail has a short section that goes over someone's cabin property and continues on the other side of his yard. It's marked with an orange blaze so you can see where to go. Usually it's an empty cabin. I always do some peering inside since it's in a pretty secluded spot, probably 4 or 5 miles from a major road. One time I was hiking through and there is a large dude grilling outside with about 15 Bud Light cans on the ground around him. I distinctly remember him saying "Keep it moving, no food here," which I thought was funny since I didn't say anything about needing food. Fast forward the following year and I decide to take my sister, my wife, and her best friend on a trip that takes us through this very spot. As we are walking up on it I see the dude is there again, which is odd, since I've hiked the trail 100 times and this is only twice I've seen him. He is grilling again, beer cans everywhere. I see him start to give the "keep it moving" signal until he sees who I am with. Now, the girls in traveling with are attractive so I'm nervous all of a sudden. He asks us to stay for dinner, says he has plenty of extra food. I tell him no, we are good, just trying to enjoy the trail away from the comforts of home. He gets weirdly pushy about us staying and I firmly say no thanks and we are just passing through. I hear the dude mumble to himself as we continue past his house. This is where things get weird. There is a prominent camping spot not far from this section of trail and it's late in my head. I want to keep going because I don't want to camp near this asshole. The consensus is everyone is pretty tired, so we set up camp. I'm nervous the whole time, thinking this drunk dude knows there are 3 women camping in tents near his cabin. I never get nervous around folk I see on the trail because everyone is usually very nice and wonderful to talk to. This guy just felt off to me though. Fast forward to the middle of the night and sure enough I hear someone on the trail outside the tent. I'm just praying it's a bear at this point. But I hear the dude mumbling to himself and I panic. I hear him now in the camp. He's going through our shit and is piss drunk. Fuck. Okay, think. I realize I have a blowhorn on my pack I use on the trail to scare animals off should I encounter any. So I unzip the tent slowly and roll out. Dude is fumbling around and it's scary as hell because it's the middle of the darkness in the middle of nowhere. I start to run towards him and blow my air horn repeatedly and it's loud as shit. Everyone in their tents starts screaming. The dude nearly shits his pants and starts bumbling the fuck out of there. Everyone is so shooken up at this point we pack up and night hike out of there. Worst experience I've ever had.